All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the CX Chronicles Podcast. Super excited for today's show. Michael Epstein, welcome to CXC, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Adrian.
Absolutely. So, guys, Michael and his team are building a super cool business at PostPilot. And he's going to walk us through his journey today and give us an idea around what him and his team have had to think about in terms of building his business, building his team, and really kind of trying to grow his business into the future. So, Michael, why don't you start off the show as we start off all of these episodes, my friend? Take a couple minutes to set the stage, let the CX Nation know who you are, how you got into this wild world, and how you and the team started to build out PostPilot.
Sure. So I've been in e-commerce for over 20 years, started a company, grew it over about a dozen years, sold it to private equity in 2013, and got into kind of private equity operating roles where I was working with 8 and 9 figure e-commerce brands that were private equity backed portfolio companies, helping them scale their customer acquisition and retention, and served as CMO of a number of 8 and 9 figure brands. And one of the strategies that I utilized at a lot of these companies was direct mail, and it was clunky. It was difficult. It was like spreadsheets, exporting spreadsheets and importing CSVs, and then finding a print house and trying to get a graphic design together, sending out big dumps of cards, and then trying to figure out what the ROI was. And myself and my business partner were just looking for a way to make it as easy as sending a targeted email campaign and as personalized as an email campaign. So we and our third co-founder started PostPilot about 4 years ago, and it's a platform that allows you to send personalized direct mail that's triggered and personalized, just like an email campaign or a flow, and it makes it super easy to do that. And we're really about that surprise and delight customer experience, reaching them in ways that they aren't, where they're not being bombarded by email campaigns and banner ads. Like, that's the way to stand out, create a delightful customer experience. And that's what keeps customers coming back. And we've seen that over and over again.
That's awesome, man. I think what I already like about your story and your journey, Michael, is just the fact that, like, working in a bunch of these different marketing leadership roles, before PostPilot, you probably got a little bit of a taste for all the different ways you got to touch a customer, all the different ways you got to think about trying to get somebody's attention, especially in this crazy world where everybody is competing for each other's attention. And then you probably got a little bit of a taste for what you kind of saw that worked with getting people to kind of come back to a business or come back to a brand and want to try to express doing interest or business with them. But also you picked one of the fun ones, because there's some creativity to this, and there's something cool about this idea. You and I were chatting about this the other day, but like, there's this idea of being able to still get something that's tangible in today's world. Like, when you literally show up from home, or like you come back from the store, and then there's this flyer, there's this mailer that actually interests you, and you look and you're like, ooh, what's this? And you still do that. You do that like effective, like, what's this? And you actually take the 30 seconds to look at the front, look at the back. I think for some of our listeners, man, like, that is the beginning of a customer's experience, right? That is literally the first moment in time when they start to think that a business, a brand, a product is there for them to possibly want to engage on the next step with. And that's what starts the whole damn thing. So that's super cool that you guys found that. Were you doing a lot of mailers at some of your companies and some of the businesses and the marketing efforts that you were leading before PostPilot? Is that really what you really were attracted to the space with?
Yeah, it definitely is. And the comments that you made are so on point. I mean, it's in this world, I totally believe what you articulated, which is in this world of digital overload, where people are getting 140 emails a day that they're ignoring or deleting. They're getting bombarded in their news feed. Like, they crave that physical connection with a brand, especially a brand that they've done business with before. Studies have shown it's a piece of direct mail, a card from a brand that you've done business with, is perceived more as a gift than an interruption. People enjoy it. They recognize it and they enjoy it. And to your question, we did use it in a lot of the businesses where I was running marketing. And one of the reasons we did was, again, exactly like what you said. We built these great automated email campaigns. They were personalized, they were triggered and segmented based on really well-defined criteria. The problem was they were getting 15 to 20% open rates.
Yeah.
No matter, how hard you try, like that's pretty typical these days.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it was like, how do we reach them in a way that we know we can get that message through? We've done the work of identifying a nicely defined audience, created a great message, a delightful experience. But if we can't get that message through, it's like wasted. So
Totally.
that's why
Yep.
we turned to direct mail. And that's why we felt so kind of passionate about building this platform.
That's super cool, man. It's super cool. Well, let's jump into a little bit about some of the journey that you and the team have been on with building it. I'd love to pick your brain and jump right into the first pillar of team. Talk a little bit about, as you guys built the business and as you started to kind of figure out how to put together the initial stable of customers. What did that look like? I mean, actually, let's start with the stable of customers part before, and that can lead you into the team, which is like, what did it look like in the beginning? I think a lot of listeners in the show are always trying to struggle to figure out how the hell you get the darn thing off the ground and get it bumping. But like, what did you guys do? What did you and the team at PostPilot do to kind of get that bonfire started and get the initial batch of customers coming through the doors?
Sure. So having been in e-commerce for as long as I have, my business partner also has been same background, same story. We had a lot of folks that we know through our network that helped us kind of validate the idea. We got them on board, testing it, proving out the results, validating it, that it worked, validating the features and capabilities that we were building into the platform. We really focus on ease of use. So what we didn't want to do is create something, with throw the kitchen sink at it and create a million different features and bells and whistles that people don't actually want to use. We're very focused on kind of the life cycle marketing aspect of it and making it as easy as possible to trigger these campaigns the way you would trigger an email campaign or an email flow. And we wanted to keep it simple and get validation from a lot of the folks that we know through our network, and being in the Shopify App Store as well, got a natural inflow of prospects that gave us good feedback on the product.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm sure that helped a ton. You're right, Michael. It's you guys did make this really simple user experience and initial customer journey around making it a literal 3-step process, right? You're creating it, just like, and then that's the other thing too. Most of the folks that are thinking about marketing, thinking about demand growth and demand generation, you're kind of used to the way that some of these other templates or some of these other email-based marketing solutions work. You guys follow that. So it's creating it, it's sending it out, and then it's tracking and it's profiting and thinking about how the hell you're going to get some of those initial leads and prospects coming back through the door ready to buy.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Very cool. Take a couple minutes to tell us a little bit about just building out the initial team, or some of the steps that you guys had to think once you started to see some of that traction, and it couldn't just be Michael anymore, but Michael needed some help and he needed people around to help kind of make things work and keep the process moving.
Sure. So it was kind of 3 of us starting out, and our third co-founder was more on the technical side. He's a product guy and engineer, developer, extremely talented. And his family had a direct mail business. They had a traditional print house. So he really understood the vision. And that was what really attracted us to him, because he had started building this product because he was really aligned with how we were thinking about the experience, and we happened to find him, and we partnered up and kind of helped to pour gas on that fire, and then we continued to develop the product, provide, get more resources, including more people, so account managers and sales folks and customer success people. We really concentrate on that service experience. We want people to feel comfortable taking that step into direct mail if they haven't tried it in the past, kind of holding their hand if they need it all the way through. And so a lot of our initial focus on the team was really driven by delivering a great customer experience and helping them all the way through the journey until they could see the results start coming in for themselves.
That's awesome, man. I know number one, it's definitely, every business has like a different path that they take with that evolution of building out the team and kind of building out the different teams, the different departments, the different roles, the different ownership areas that's required to really have a super sound customer experience and like a seamless effort from the first click of the buying process all the way to the end, right? Or letting somebody know that it was, you know, a 5 out of 5 or a 10-star type of experience that you had with them. But
Yeah.
it's cool that you guys started with having almost like what I just heard is like the appropriate sneeze in the right areas, just to make sure that you could actually get the business to a point where each one of you kind of had your little pocket of ownership that you were already super versed in and knew really, really well. I think that's important to call out. I think like for our listeners, like a lot of times there's this feeling when you're starting these businesses, leading or starting these teams or building these teams, especially in the early phase when you're just a small little scrappy startup, to want to do as much of this stuff as you can on your own. And honestly, it's like, and you hear tons of successful people talk about this all the time. You have to get out of your own way and start putting other people in a position where you can delegate some of these tasks and these activities that absolutely help get the bonfire started. You give them to other people that are going to do them much better than you. When you're wearing all these different hats and you got all these different focus points, you're doing many things okay, right? Instead of doing a few things exceptionally well. So I love that you guys kind of baked that into the whole growth part of the process and the development of the team, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. And I think that was some of my biggest learnings, particularly working with the 8 and 9 figure brands where I had teams of 100 plus people, understanding the value of developing that team and getting people, exactly as you said, that you can delegate to and are going to be much better at these specific functional areas that you are, is so critical. And we've really applied that to PostPilot as well and built just a phenomenal team, from account management to designers to customer success folks, developers. I think that was one of the biggest learnings that I had in my previous experience that helped us build out the great team that we have today.
That's awesome, man. Michael, I'd love to dive into second CX pillar tools. I'm super interested to kind of hear how you guys thought about building out that initial toolkit, and I'd love to kind of hear just the way that you guys started to think about how you were going to get PostPilot off the ground. What type of technology, what type of tools, what type of software did you guys leverage to be able to get things moving?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was we knew this was going to be a native Shopify app from the beginning. That's kind of our sweet spot. Is typically minimum size is very high 6 to 7 figure annual revenue business, up to 100 plus million, but making it super easy to integrate with Shopify, which so many e-commerce stores are on, as well as a result of that native integration, have the ability to easily segment customers, to easily do the tracking of ROI based on us knowing if a customer comes back and buys again. That was really the biggest kind of tool that we wanted to leverage for the product. And then we started building additional integrations as well. So things like Klaviyo, where you can leverage your existing segmentation that you've built in your email platform and use that in PostPilot.
Super cool. Yeah, I think that makes a huge difference once you start to kind of, number one, just have additional help and additional solutions that can make some of the day-to-day things easier. When you're talking about segmentation, I'd love for you to dive deeper into that. Give us some ideas around what were some of the ways that you guys had to actually think about slicing and dicing or compartmentalizing that early email list or that early customer list to be able to, I guess, send better messaging, better calls to action. I'd love for you to dive a little bit further into that. Give us some ideas on that, Michael.
Yeah, sure. So if you think about email campaigns, if you think about audience targeting on social media, you don't want to just blast to everybody. You want to really define who that audience is and provide a relevant message. And so we wanted to really focus on building segmentation capabilities that you might be familiar with from using MailChimp or Klaviyo or other email platforms, where you can say, customer makes purchase, they don't buy again for 45 days. We want to trigger this campaign to go out.
Okay.
We can do it, to infinite levels of granularity, but it would be, okay, they spent over $500 or they just made their 4th purchase. Let's trigger a thank you card to go out and a loyalty incentive to keep them coming back. We know that they just bought product A. if they don't buy product B within 60 days, we're going to trigger a card that gives them an incentive that says, hey, saw you love product A, let's recommend this, and here's a coupon to come and get it. That retention, that LTV aspect of it is just so critical, because that's where profits come from, as I'm sure you know. It's in retention. Customer acquisition costs are so high, and they continue to go through the roof these days. If you don't have that kind of retention process and flywheel built into your business, it is very difficult to be profitable going forward.
Absolutely, man. I'm super happy you called that out, Michael, because you're right. Like, even if you take like typical everyday businesses, you think about dentists, you think about lawyers, you think about catering companies. These companies are I mean, just on a pay-per-click type of discussion today, they're paying a fortune just to get clicks, not even to get the buys, just to get the clicks and the views that might lead to a buy. And you're right, like acquisition costs are through the roof. The other thing too is like post-pandemic, and I think in the pandemic, it made a lot of companies and a lot of industries think about this very differently, because everybody spent 2 years essentially trying to double down on retention, or trying to go through every single customer that they ever sold $1 of business to and try to figure out how they could keep them around, or at least keep them in the hopper, if you will, keep them warmed up and primed and ready to eventually buy again. And so now you're right, like this is like a whole new focus. I think some of the smartest companies in the world do an incredible job of constantly monitoring retention, constantly mitigating churn. I think there's another interesting part of what you were explaining to us with like how granular you can get with some of this stuff. Those are companies that understand their customer journeys extremely well. Because when I heard you saying pulling out like different segments or different cohorts of user types and customer types, plotting out like different timeline scenarios, 45 days, 60 days, 90 days, even being able to pull the dials a little bit tighter, where you start to see like different LTV ranges or spend projections or whatever you guys call them in your own businesses. But like, that stuff's huge, man. And the reality is, it's actually not, it can get super complex and super intense, but you can start in a very simple fashion, right? Just understanding who bought this year. Have we touched them in the last 30 days? Or it could be who didn't buy this year that bought with us in the past. Have we touched them in the last 30? Like simple stuff like that, right? And then take it to PostPilot's level. Think about which mediums or like which touch points, whether it's phones or emails or text message or mailer cards. Think about which mediums actually brings the biggest bang for the buck and gets people to come back, pick up the phone, put another product in the shopping cart, etc. That's going to help grow your business and bring some dollar bills in.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. And if you can, and you start simple, they make a purchase, they don't purchase again for a certain amount of time. Getting that second purchase is so key. You don't need to go too into the weeds to start. Keep it high level. But just getting that second purchase, again, to your point, is just so important. And that's what allows you to spend up on customer acquisition. Because if you know that a customer is worth X to you today and you can increase that amount, then you know you can go back and pay up to acquire more customers and be competitive. And if you're not doing it, your competitors are doing it, and they're going to be able to outbid you on the customer acquisition side all day long if you don't focus on keeping that customer coming back.
Big time. Yep, absolutely. Michael, I'd love to pick your brain a little bit on the third CX pillar process. So number one, you've probably had to spend a ton of time in this post pilot in terms of some of the teams and the companies that you're helping to build, but take a couple of minutes to give CX Nation some ideas around how you and the post pilot team have had to think about managing process as the business grew, as you continue to find more customers, as you continue to have to send more and more of these mailers out to your customer base. Spend just a few minutes kind of talking about some of the things that worked really well with you guys in terms of managing process or documenting process or figuring out how to keep process as the glue of keeping all this stuff together, especially as you guys started to grow.
Sure. And it's a great and very relevant question, because we've been growing so fast, especially over the last year and a half or so, that we've been constantly having to focus on process to make sure that we're servicing customers in a way that's efficient and helpful to them. And we've noticed that a lot of customers, a lot of our users are so busy, they need a little, and a lot of them are new to direct mail, so they need a little more handholding. They need a little more help along the way. So having bringing a design team on staff so that we can actually do the designs for our customers if they don't have something ready to go or the resources or bandwidth to do that. Having more account managers to help guide them through the process. We'll basically, in a lot of cases, we'll actually build the entire campaign for the customer. They know that they want to test into direct mail. We'll help identify their segmentation. We'll help build a design based on our experience with so many thousands of different campaigns. And we kind of know what works. The key is to have a process internally that allows us to move that along efficiently, not create fewer touch points with the customer from the standpoint of having to go back and forth on a million different questions and tweaks and changes, things like that. We want to make it as easy for that customer as possible to move forward and not have to do a lot of heavy lifting on their end. So yeah, thinking about the CRM, the project management tools, the customer service interfaces, things like Intercom, things like Basecamp, that allow us to really easily understand where customers are in the journey with us and help them move along in that journey and realize the success of their campaigns as quickly as possible is something we focus a lot on.
Yeah, that's huge. I think that makes a big difference. And then again, it's just, I don't know, you're getting, the more dialed you can get with some of this stuff and the more, I guess just the more related it is to a given customer in terms of where they are in the journey, the higher the resonance, right? Like if you like to your point about the 2-time buy, like, hey, Mr. Customer, what do we need to do to get you to come back and buy another Willie or Wear this year? Like if they're actually thinking about it and if it's been in their mind and then they get that piece, that mailer in and they look at it and it reminds, oh shoot, that's right. I was going to get another one of these anyway for a gift, or I was going to get another one anyway because it's been 6 months since I've gotten one and I need a replacement. Like that's huge. That's part of that stuff is just like, it's how you keep, some form of relevance in your prospect or your customers' minds. And then the other piece to it too, though, is just like going back to, we already talked about this earlier in the show, but like it is we live in such a distracted world this day and age, simple as that. So like a huge part of future customer experience and customer success leaders' number one piece of value that they're going to bring to any company that they ever work for, it's constantly remaining relevant in a customer's mind, constantly remaining relevant in your account decision maker's mind, constantly reminding or gently poking or reminding people that you're here to help them with everything that they need. That is the value that you're going to bring. And that's the reason why we're seeing so many companies across the world spending the most money we've ever seen them spend on this part of the business to do that retention extremely well. And to also just like grow your business and grow some of your sales and grow some of your revenues and increase your business performance by selling more things to the customers you already have, right? Because that's another easy way of improving your business performance in general. Yeah. Plus it's fun, right? Selfishly, it's like, it's fun to be able to do more business with customers that you already got an awesome relationship with. And you just keep deepening that whole relationship and deepening that whole experience working together.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think that remaining top of mind is so key. And brands like CPG brands spend astronomical amounts of money with advertising, brand advertising, in the effort to stay top of mind, reduce the friction when it comes to deciding who to purchase from going forward. And that's expensive. And if you can kind of shortcut that a bit, especially, if you're relying on digital messages exclusively, they're so fleeting. They're gone in an instant. You see it. If you see it at all, you kind of forget it instantaneously. To your point, you've got a physical piece of mail. You create a more physical connection. It helps create a more memorable experience. That piece of mail then also sits on the table. It sits on the refrigerator.
It's like a mini billboard. It's a mini billboard.
You're seeing it over and over again. And just to that point, that's why we also introduced more recently these handwritten cards as well. With actual handwritten cards, we have robotic technology that writes with the nuance of a human hand, creates a handwritten card, personalized card, handwritten envelope, real stamp on the front. That's another option that we've added because we care so much about delivering that surprise and delight experience, something that is super memorable, is going to make a lasting impression on that customer and ensure that you stay top of mind without spending so much money just with ads, hammering them over and over and over again.
Yeah, guys, I was telling Michael last week, one of the businesses that I was helping to build in New York City, H Bloom, we had this huge, massive national campaign with Ralph Lauren. I was telling Michael, dude, I could have used you guys years ago because we had to have, to Michael's point, I think it was like we hired a team of 10, part-time, like TaskRabbit folks to come in to our offices in Midtown. And they literally, Mike, they banged out handwritten notes to all of our Ralph customers for weeks on end, so that when we were ready to actually send out this nationwide orchid delivery, we had our handwritten notes to all of our customers ready to rock and roll. And that took so much time. So if we could have had PostPilot back then, that would have saved a lot of people a lot of time and a lot of energy, my friend.
And a lot of hand cramps.
And a lot of handprint, a ton of handprint. Mike, I'd love to dive into the fourth and the final CX pillar of feedback. Spend a couple minutes talking about, not just at PostPilot, man, but from all the different customer bases that you've worked with and all the different businesses you've been a part of helping to build and to grow. What have been some of the things that you've kind of learned along your journey, or what are some of the things that you've found to be like really, really helpful when it comes not only to collecting feedback, but thinking about how you can collect it, assess it, and then act on it? Talk about feedback for a couple of minutes, man.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's so important. I think in my experiences with a lot of the larger companies, literally my first initiative, like the first priority that I've had when I stepped into these companies is go sit with the contact center folks. Yeah. Like go listen to the frontline reps who are talking to customers all day long. Understand what their real pain points are. Where's the friction in the buying experience? What drove them to come and make this and have interest or make that purchase in the first place? Either listening to customer calls, reading customer emails, reading customer reviews, and talking to the frontline folks is so important. As well as even I would go and make customer calls as well. I'd pick a random kind of section of customers, whether they purchased from a specific category or they exhibited certain behavior. And I just make random calls and just understand what they were, again, what drove them to make the purchase, what was going on in their life that drove them to do that, and what were the pain points, how was the experience, what could we do better? And so you can do that, you can do surveys, you can do NPS. There's a lot of ways to gather this feedback. We've done it a lot of different ways. And I think we take the same approach at PostPilot. We really listen to our customers being merchants, and understand what their pain points are. When we hear loud and clear that iOS is jacking up their Facebook ad spend, like that's a pain point that we can speak to, and we can help demonstrate how our product helps solve for that. When they talk about, their email open rates, and when they talk about other direct mail campaigns that they may have experimented with in the past that again required a lot of spreadsheets going back and forth with people, like those, that is so critical. And that's how we build our product roadmap, is really understanding customer feedback and how to make that actionable.
I love that. There's two things that you just called out that I love it. The first one is just that frontline listening tour. Spot on, brother. That is the easiest way. Like for people that are trying to think about how they can just improve their own general customer experience or success efforts, if you haven't listened to a bunch of customer phone calls or read a bunch of your customer emails or text messages, please just start there, because you don't even need a big sample, right? You could listen to it could be 10 phone calls, it could be 10 emails. And but I love, Michael, I totally agree. This is a big part of what we do at CXC with our clients too, but couple that or marry that with talking to an incredible internal employee who does 100 of those phone calls or 100 of those emails per day. So then you do your 5 or your 10 phone call, your 5 or your 10 ticket, or your 5 or your 10 email examples with that guy or gal, giving you full color on but here's what that means for this piece. And when they said this, what they're really talking about, check this out with our own internal tools. Look at this gap right here. Yeah, I do that 100 times a day. It's pretty crazy, right? And you start to hear these types of things that your employees know, and that the people that are talking to customers every day, it's 10 times more valuable, I'd say. Like at least the other thing too, that's good EX, right? Having having either your executive team members or having other folks in your business. Maybe it's like, bring some product people over and have them bang out 10 customer phone calls. Bring some marketing people over who have all these brilliant ideas. Have them actually try to execute the brilliant ideas on 10 phone calls. See if all of a sudden it's a brilliant idea. And then the last thing is just like, you learn from each other. There's that, like, I know it sounds cheesy or whatever, but like, that's where your team can literally help kind of like grow and support and make itself better by sharing some of that different tribal knowledge and those different points of view to really make a big change or a big positive impact. So that's the first thing. Second thing you said that I love was the this idea of on like the customer survey side, right? You got to be collecting it, but like sharing a product, Michael, is one of the biggest things that we see at CXC that companies frankly are horrible at. Like, meaning like they have all this color from CX or CS around like the top 5 pain points or the top 5 like surprise and delighters, the top 5 things customers love about you. What they don't necessarily do a fantastic job with is sharing some of those granular bits of feedback that come through that are ripe for our product and technology folks. Meaning like a CX person might read something about a bug or maybe a version error, like where like a specific version does a different thing differently than a new version. Or I guess like lastly, even like a specific part of like the UX and the UI piece of the buying process, where a CX and a CS person might read it like, oh, they think that's a buggy or they think that's a glitchy. But if you give it to your product team, they might look at it and be like, Michael, this is why I've been telling you we need to move these 3 things up the OKR list. This is validation that like one of our big customers or our valuable customers is validating what we've been trying to say is an issue. So like, it's really important to marry that CX, that CS, and that product knowledge. And not only that, it helps to kind of sharpen the game faster, right? It picks up the speed in terms of how you can kind of get a little bit tighter and faster and better with whatever you're building. So yeah. Michael, this is awesome, brother. This has been an absolute pleasure. Before we wrap up, I want to spend a couple minutes talking about where people can find more about you, sir, and spend a couple minutes talking about where people can go check out PostPilot.
Sure. You can go to postpilot.com. I'm sure there'll be a link in the show notes. I'll give you a link, Adrian, where people can get a bonus offer.
Awesome.
Way to try it out, really risk-free. And you can email me directly if you have questions on direct mail, if you want to talk e-commerce, you want to just geek out on this stuff, Michael at postpilot.com. Find me on LinkedIn. Love to chat about this stuff.
Love it. And I think, this is the super interesting part of like this new world that we're in, Michael, with customer experiences and customer success. I love that we're talking to a marketing expert today, because it just proved that like companies that are doing an awesome job with their CX and CS, marketing, sales, product, customer success, customer support, they're all joint, right? They're all joined together. They're all constantly communicating and collaborating. So this is awesome, man. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, sir.
Yeah, love what you're doing, Adrian. It was super fun to talk about this stuff, and I totally agree with you.
Thank you so much, Michael. We'll look forward to talking to you soon, brother.
All right, thanks.
Okay.